Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're talking about something that, let's be honest, affects every single one of us, grief. But we're going to look at it from a completely different angle, one that might just change the way you think about loss. So, let's get into it. Grief isn't always this big, dramatic thing we see in movies. A lot of the time, it's more like this quiet hum in the background of your life. It's this undercurrent that, as one therapist puts it, can be the real reason behind so many of our other struggles, and we might not even know it. And that brings up a huge question. We've all been taught to connect grief with death, right? The loss of a loved one. But what if that's only a tiny piece of the puzzle? What if grief is everywhere? So that's our first big idea. Let's really dig into how widespread grief is and how it pops up in some pretty unexpected corners of our lives. Okay, take a look at this number. It's pretty staggering. A therapist we're looking at found that around 80% of her clients' sessions, no matter what they came in for, eventually led back to some kind of unresolved loss. 80%. Just let that sink in. And here's what that looks like in the real world. Someone might come in wanting to lose weight or deal with anxiety or get over a breakup. But when they dig down, the real root of the problem is often the leftover energy from a loss they never fully got to process. And this is where the definition of grief starts to get even bigger. Because it's not just about grieving people who are gone. Sometimes we're grieving futures that never happened. This quote just hits so hard. I mean, think about it. Have you ever been completely devastated by a breakup, and then later you realize you weren't just mourning the person, you were mourning the future you had built up in your head? So there are really two things happening here. On one side, you're grieving the actual person, flaws and all. But on the other, you're grieving the idea of them, that perfect version, the potential you saw, the whole life you imagined together. And a lot of the time, it's that story, that idea that hurts the most. So if grief is always kind of simmering under the surface, what happens when a really big loss finally hits? Well, that leads us to our next point. It's almost never about just that one thing. It's usually the last straw. Right, that feeling of completely falling apart after a major loss, it's often the grand finale of every little thing that came before it. I really like this way of visualizing it. Imagine your nervous system is just carrying all these small, unresolved hurts from your whole life. It's already in a state of overwhelm, it's already burdened, and then the big loss happens. It isn't the only cause of the breakdown, it's just the final piece of weight that's too much to carry. It's the thing that breaks the camel's back. All right, let's talk about the biggest myth out there, this idea that grief is supposed to follow some kind of neat and tidy roadmap. We all know them, don't we? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. It's been hammered into our culture. But is that actually how human beings work? And there it is. Our source doesn't pull any punches. That whole idea of linear stages is just not true. Your brain doesn't read a textbook to figure out how to feel. Grief is messy, it's personal, and it's unique to you. And this is so important to remember. Grief can be all of these things, sometimes all in the same day. It's totally normal to feel relief that someone's suffering is over, and then feel guilty about feeling relieved. It's okay to feel joy when you remember a happy moment, and then crushing sadness that they're gone. There are no wrong feelings here. It's all part of it. So if there's no map and no right way to do it, how in the world do you move forward? Well, our last section gets into a really powerful tool for actually processing grief and finding some peace. It's called an imaginative goodbye, and the key distinction here is absolutely critical. The point is not to say goodbye to the person. It's not about erasing them or the love you had. The goal is to release the pain that's attached to the loss. So here's kind of how it works. You're guided back to a real, vivid memory you have with that person, and in that safe, imaginative space, you finally get to say all the things you never got to say. Then you literally give the grief, the pain, the hurt, permission to leave. And what's left behind? Just the pure, uncomplicated love. And this quote just says it all. You are not letting go of the person. You're letting go of the pain, the guilt, the anger, all of that heavy stuff we call grief. You're saying goodbye to that. So I'll leave you with this to think about. What if we stopped thinking about grief as something to get over, like it's an erasure? What if, instead, we saw it as a process of releasing the pain so we can hold on to the love? How does that shift change everything? How does that make healing feel not just possible, but actually peaceful?